In order to stop losing your fish on a crankbait, you have to have the correct setup. The first thing is your rod. You do not need a heavy duty rod like a medium heavy or a heavy power. You need something that's a little softer, that's got a little more give. I like this Bass Pro Shops cranking stick. It is a 7-foot medium power rod that gives me enough flex so that I'm not ripping the hooks out of the fish's mouth. The next thing is the line size. I use 10-pound fluorocarbon. I like the 10-pound fluorocarbon because it's light enough to get that down to the depth zone and keep it down in the depth zone, but it's not too light to where I can't land some of those bigger fish. If you go heavier than 10, you may go to 12, but I prefer the 10-pound fluorocarbon, the 10-pound line weight, just to make sure that I'm getting this crankbait down and keeping it down at the depth that it's rated to go to, and even maybe a little further. So the next thing is the reel and the gear ratio. I like a 5:6 to 1 on my crankbaits. The only crankbait that I don't use a 5:6 to 1 is a lipless crankbait. I use a higher speed, like a 7.5 to 1 for a lipless, but for all of my crankbaits, I will use a 5:6 to 1. So I think something in the 5s or something in the 6s. You do not need to go to a high-speed reel because you're not going to keep this in the strike zone as long. Plus, when you go to set the hooks, if you're taking up more line, you're more likely to get in, when you catch a fish, you kind of get a little bit of an adrenaline rush, you get some emotion, and you tend to do a lot of jerkety movements, and even with your reel, you tend to reel a little faster. If you go to a lower speed reel, you're not taking up as much line, and you're less likely to rip or pull that line from the fish's mouth. Probably, in terms of the most important thing, even if you didn't have this same rod or same, power, even if your gear ratio is a little different or a little higher, one thing that makes all the difference in the world with catching fish on a crankbait and landing them, not just getting the bites, but the part of this that makes it so much more easier to land a crankbait fish is your drag, having proper drag. You do not want your drag on a crankbait to be so tight like a jig or a Texas rig to where when you pull that, if I were to crank this all the way up as tight as it can go, that's no good. You need to check this. If you're getting ready to throw a crankbait and you've not seen this video, you're seeing it now. Drag way too tight. I'm gonna jerk that those sets of hooks, the treble hook. It's not a good deal. That fish comes up to jump. There's no elasticity to it. There's no stretch to it. There's no give to it. I'm gonna jerk that lure straight from its mouth. You want your drag to be pretty loose so that when you start pulling this line out, it's coming out fairly easy with very little effort. That's how I want my drag set up on my crankbaits, so that once again, when that fish takes that lure and starts running with it or comes up and jumps, it's not tight to where I'm gonna pull that lure from its mouth. So that's extremely important. The drag needs to be pretty loose so that fish can run with that lure, okay? And it's going to run with it. It's not a jig set or a Texas rig where those are violent, hook sets. You're hook setting, pretty much straight up and down with a jig or a Texas rig. You're not setting the hook like that with a crankbait and reeling it in as fast as possible. This is still power fishing, but you have to be a little finessey with your hook sets. So whenever I cast this out, all right, and I'm reeling it in, and I feel the line go slack, or I feel that bite. When I set the hook for a crankbait, I'm simply going to just lean in to the side. I'm just going to lean into it, okay? Whether you're throwing it from the right-hand side or the left-hand side, you're just going to do a sweeping action with your rod and lean into it. You're not going to jerk it real fast. You're just kind of leaning into it, and those treble hooks will go into the mouth, go into the fish, and you are going to have those hooks set. But the biggest thing is, whenever you set that hook, that fish is going to run, and I keep coming back to this, the drag is so important. You want that drag to have give, okay? If it's too tight, you are going to lose those fish. And even when you're fishing it around brush or structure, if you got your line way too tight and you run into something that's not a fish, you hook it in something, if you go to set that hook really hard in there, you're just digging it in deeper. These crankbaits are built to be buoyant. You know, that when you stop reeling, that's going to start floating back up, okay? So whenever getting to the part where, well, I get stuck on too many things, or I'm worried about getting stuck, throwing it around different structure or whatever, I'll throw this in just about anywhere, and I can get it back. And what I simply do is, when I reel it through and I feel it hit something that's not a fish, and this takes a little bit of time, you have to practice, I'll just simply let it go. I won't keep setting the hook into it, and then eventually it'll float back up. Or I'll get on the other side of it and pull it out of the structure. But I get this back in just about any place. If I do get it hung up, I've learned over time that with the proper setup and drag, that I can fish this, and I feel confident in throwing it in just about anything. So if you are losing crankbait fish, more than likely your rod is way too stiff, your reel is way too fast, or your drag is way too tight. And then on top of that, if you are not getting enough bites, you may be that your line is too heavy. It's not getting down there. Because of crankbait, what you want that crankbait to do is you want it to deflect, off of cover. So, you want it, like if this seat is the bottom, I want it hitting the bottom. I want it bouncing off rock. I want it to hit just about as many things as it possibly can. If it's a rock bottom, I want it hitting the rocks the entire time. So this is a DT6. Most of the time I'm going to fish this in 6 feet of water, down to 4 feet. So I don't want to go out much deeper than that. For that, I'd do a DT8, and then that's that 8 to 6 foot range. So those are just some tips that I've picked up over time with my setup. I hardly lose crankbait fish anymore, but just like you, if you're saying, hey, I lose too many of them, or I get hung up in everything, it's probably because of the setups that you have, and it's very important that you have the correct setup. So my recommendation for these medium diving crankbaits, 7 foot medium rod, gear ratio 5:6 to 1. The drag, loosen that up, 10-pound fluorocarbon, and when you go to hook set, just sweep side to side. You're not doing a big overpowering hook set. Hopefully those tips will help with your crankbait fishing. God bless you. We'll catch you next time.